I'm really honored to also welcome you here at LSBU, and I would like to start with a few thank you notes. I'm grateful to Professor Taradin for such a generous introduction. I'm also grateful to all my colleagues from the School of Art and Social Science. There are many of you here, and also to colleagues from our College of Society. Thank you for being here and supporting me. I want to say a special thank you to the acting team, so John, Aidan, Alex, Ben, and Luis. I can't see you. Thank you all for kind of critical conversations that we maintain in the department, but also for all the jokes and fun that we have. Jade, I didn't forget you. No, I saw you and I was like, oh, Jade as well, yes. I'm also thankful to my students, past and present. Thank you for being here. You're always curious, inquisitive, and sometimes tricky. And I really appreciate that, because that pushes me to the limit of my discipline and always kind of keeps me on the edge. I'm also very grateful to Ellie and Maddie, who are here and who will read some of the kind of reflective writing and creative writing that I kind of use in my work. Finally, I want to say a big thank you to my family, to my husband and my 2 children who are here as well. You are the pillars of my success and happiness. Thank you very much. Okay, so now that we are done with all the thank yous, I also want to reflect of who is not here today with us. First of all, I want to say that many of my colleagues who work in the creative industries can't be here with us because they're either performing or delivering live events or maybe teaching. So this is also to acknowledge that working in the creative industries is a very demanding job, and also that they are all kind of actually working towards a dream that then all of you enjoy as kind of very inspirative theater performances, films, or exhibitions. So I want to acknowledge them tonight. I also want to say that many members of my closest family and friends and collaborators from Macedonia and from the Balkans can't be here tonight with us because of the UK rigid visa regimes. So just to give you an example, the cost of a tourist visa for UK currently stands at £115, and this doesn't include the additional service charges that providers, kind of private providers, charge for kind of services that they provide to the Home Office. Also, many of my academic and artistic collaborators from the Global South can be here for the same reason. And I want to kind of say that Western academia is still very elitist field, and I feel that this kind of is impacting the wider impact that we and reach that we can make with our work. However, I will try to bring them tonight in the room as well, and through reflective writing, and their incredible storytelling is always with me. Okay, so I was debating if I should do this or not with you, but actually I want to ask you to do something together. So I want you to turn to the person on your left, and to kind of, maybe you will need to work in 2s or in 3s, and to kind of just discuss for a minute or tell them what you're an expert in. And this is not about your academic expertise or professional expertise, but something that kind of that only you can do. Maybe you can make the perfect poached egg, or maybe you know exactly when to take the clothes in before it starts to rain. We live in England, all right? So something like that, that only you can do really well, that you're expert in. So I will give you a couple of minutes to kind of talk about this expertise that you hold. What about you? What kind of expertise, maybe?
I made for my wife a herring cheesecake, because she loves herring and not cheesecake. So I think maybe I'm the only person to have done that.
Oh, wow. Wow. I would like to try that. All right. So, I mean, just kind of hold this, because I will come back later in the talk to this point about expertise and about kind of how different experiences and expertise that we all bring matter to us, and kind of how we produce knowledge in the society. All right, so let's move to part 1 of the lecture.
Chicago, winter 2003. At a friend's baby shower party, it is the first winter day. Snow and wind, it is absolutely freezing outside. Standing next to a woman that I just met, waiting for our guest of honour to come. I hardly know anyone at this party. Moreover, it is my first experience of baby shower. She tries to understand where Macedonia is, and I try to explain what I am doing here. And there she is, entering the room, in a long greyish coat, probably borrowed from her husband. Her hair is soaking wet, and her face is pale from the cold. She enters shivering with a hesitant smile, her belly popping the buttons of the coat. A man from the far end of the room, apparently half drunk and out of place in this whole embrace the feminine situation, yells at her. "Oh, there she is. And with that bump, you look like an Eastern European woman. Like the female version of Tom Hanks in that movie. What was the name?" And bursts out in laughter. She smiles back at him, puzzled by the comment, and then her gaze is frozen on my face. Her lips move in a whisper. "Sorry, I just waved my hand."
Thank you. Okay, so I borrowed the title for this part of the lecture from Sun Ra's song, "There Are Other Worlds They Have Not Told You Of." The energy undulating from his music drew upon the interconnectedness of the human, earth, and universe. This track was released in 1978, the year I was born, for Sun Ra's album Liquidity. The song is one of Sun Ra's most haunting space anthems, and easily the most sorrowful. There seems to be a weariness that separates this theme from all the others he composed. Sun Ra's music remained unknown to me until I heard it late one night in a flat in Chicago in 2003 during the monthly meeting we held as a group of disenfranchised students at one of the most expensive art schools in the US. Many of us were from what the West frames as the global South, Third World, Eastern Europe, or generally the periphery. These gatherings were for us an embodiment of Frantz Fanon's argument of political solidarity between the Third World masses in the post-war era. We discussed endlessly issues of representation and why, at the prestigious institution we all attended, mostly as token scholarship students, it was considered passé. But it was the early notice, and the world basked in excess. The East-West divide was gone. Everyone believed we would abolish borders altogether. Gender and race were not considered issues worth discussing anymore. Since 2008, I have been based in the United Kingdom, where I continued my educational journey, yet again as a scholarship student from the periphery of Europe. As I was approaching the end of my degree, Theresa May, the UK Home Secretary at that time, declared her aim to create a hostile environment for migrants. Since 2010, restrictive measures have been placed on almost every migration stream: student visa, work visa, residency permits for EU citizens. The UK Home Office Hostile Environment Policy has since become codified in 2014 and 2016 Immigration Acts. These policies embed immigration control into nearly every facet of daily life, including healthcare, education, employment, and housing. Despite these harsh measures, the government failed to meet its net migration targets, which has led to additional restrictions in 2024, including barring care workers and international students from bringing dependents, as well as raising salary thresholds for skilled workers and family visas. So the hostile environment policy has faced strong criticism for both its legality and implementation. According to the Free Movement website, this means that the current UK migration approach is characterized by a system of citizen-on-citizen immigration checks. As argued by the journalist Daniel Trilling, the border is now extended inwards into the everyday life of migrants. This prompted the creation of what Trilling calls a parallel system for migrants.
So what you end up having set up is a kind of parallel system just for immigrants, with biometric visas initially, various forms of ID cards for asylum seekers and other kinds of immigrants, people who've been given leave to remain and so on, who are being monitored in a way that the native or UK citizen population is not.
So this parallel system is deeply ingrained in the experience of many migrant artists in the United Kingdom. As highlighted by a report by Migrants in Culture, based on a UK-wide survey conducted between May and July 2019, 90% of respondents felt angry and or fearful about the hostile environment. The findings of the report are sobering. Since the launch of the hostile environment, both migrants and citizens of color are experiencing increased discrimination and hardship in the cultural sector. This manifests in overt racial profiling, financial pressures, and emotional stress. Also, it demonstrates complacency by the cultural organizations, including individuals in senior management who lack knowledge around the hostile environment policy and the specific needs and experiences of migrant cultural workers. So this parallel system is at the basis of two of my research projects that I will discuss with you today, where I worked with artists that come from migrant, refugee, and asylum-seeking background. The Displaced and Privileged was commissioned by Live Art Development Agency in 2016 as part of Restock, Rethink, Reflect series, mapping underrepresented artists, practices, and histories. Between 2016 and 2018, the focus was on live art and privilege, and the aim of the series was to look at the ways in which live art has developed new forms of access, knowledge, agency, and inclusion in relation to the disempowered constituencies of the displaced and those excluded through social and economic barriers. This research is also part of a bigger project called Collaborative Art Partnership Program, funded by the European Union, which is focusing on collaborative practices with the aim of engaging new participants and enhancing mobility and exchange for artists. When designing the research, I was keen to find ways to speak about the complexity of displacement, both as a lived experience and as an artistic concept. So it was perhaps logical to start with my own history. I was born and brought up in Yugoslavia, a country that underwent an extreme rupture in its history in the 90s, and a country that doesn't exist anymore. In Shame, Salman Rushdie contemplates the hopefulness of displaced people who have experienced destructive acts of history.
When individuals come unstuck from their native land, they are called migrants. When nations do the same thing, the act is called secession. What is the best thing about migrant peoples and seceded nations? I think it is their hopefulness. And what's the worst thing? It is the emptiness of one's luggage. I'm speaking of invisible suitcases, not the physical, perhaps cardboard variety containing a few meaning-draining mementos. We have come unstuck from more than land. We have floated upwards from history, from memory, from time.
So from someone who comes from a partitioned country, the sentiment Rushdie describes is very resonant. The fragmentation is not only physical, but deeply psychological. I was part of the many waves of immigration from ex-Yugoslavia in the course of the last 3 decades. I grew up in time of us and them, in and out of Europe. However, hostile borders are just one element of the experience of displacement.
Displacement, the action of moving something from its place or position, the unconscious transfer of an intense emotion from one object to another.
Displacement doesn't only refer to a specific place. In fact, nowadays, it has very little to do with a very specific geographic location. For this project, I interviewed 20 artists and looked at their work in which displacement is explored through means of family, community, shared culture, race, or even nostalgia for a moment or a place to which the artist somehow belonged. As argued by Maria Clara Bernal, when artists deal with the topic of displacement in their work, they embody the concept of the artist as ethnographer, according to which the artist becomes observer and illustrator of phenomena. While developing the publication, I responded both consciously and instinctively to the state of displacement that Europe was experiencing during the long summer of migration. So this is that summer when we saw lots of immigrants coming through Europe, through the Balkan route particularly. The general sense of normality in most developed Western democracies has been displaced. The perception of what action and words are allowed in the public sphere has been displaced. I looked back to historical moments where we have experiences of similar situations, while also trying to develop recommendations of how we can look forward. So one of the outcomes of this research was this publication that you see here on the screen, and actually it's open access, so you can kind of all access it for free. The first part of this publication draws on work of Roma and traveler artists. The Roma travelers and gypsies have been the subject of stereotypical representation by predominantly non-Roma artists. However, the Roma minorities in Europe, the pertinent travelers, have endured a long violent history that repeats itself constantly. I thought it is a matter of urgency to invite Roma artists to discuss their work with me as part of this publication, since we need to discuss how art refers to the current and historical situation of Roma in Europe. The second section of this book is dedicated to artists who deal with issues of displacement through the discourse of witnessing. The main ethical impetus behind their engagement with issues of displacement arises from their need to bear witness to the current crisis and to offer us the story of the other. And in the final, third section, I engage in analyzing the work of artists who share similar histories to mine. In this section, I have explored how artists have grappled with the uncomfortable task of weaving memories and the new reality of crisis into the fabric of their work, along with and in the ever-changing landscape of the world we live in. And I want to bring the voice of a really dear friend, the Mexican artist Guillermo Gomez Pena from the collective La Pocha Nostra, to the room now.
Performance artists create autonomous border zones where the transit of ideas, radical art, and human bodies is not only allowed but encouraged. The goal for us nowadays is to welcome all demonized others into our performance universe. This includes all transnational spaces we work in, and treat young artists from all communities as true peers and first-class citizens, even if only for the duration of the workshop or the performance. In our performance universe, there are no passports, no border patrolmen, and no social classes. We know it is an imaginary space, but we also know that it actually exists, even if only for the duration of a project.
Okay, part 2, finding home. In 2018, I received further funding from Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada for a 3-year international project titled Project Finding Home, Migration, Placemaking and Research Creation. As summarized by one of the co-investigators, Professor Marusia Bochurkov, who led the Canadian part of the research, Project Finding Home foregrounds the idea that migration is story and story is survival. When originally planning the UK side of the project with co-researchers Caroline Dufresne and Winston Witter, we deliberately developed a co-creative and ethno-ethnographic approach to study borders and migration. As argued by the author and the academic Shahram Khosravi, this enables research that can explore abstract concepts of policy and law and translate them into cultural terms grounded in everyday life. So in the next section, I will discuss a bit how we develop some of the co-creative methodologies. But I want to try the sound first, because I don't know how loud this will come up. Okay, all right. So first I will talk a bit about the research design and the methods that we used, and then I will bring 2 case studies, and I hope that this will highlight how migrant-led research can challenge existing knowledge production on migrant journeys by highlighting the co-creation process. So with a focus on centering the visibility of lived experience and embodied and situated knowledge, we engaged creative practices in our research methodology to challenge the linearity of traditional academic knowledge. This methodological approach builds on work of social scientists, ethnographers, and artist researchers who in the past decades had advocated for a better understanding of migrants' own perspective of their migratory experience. This approach is entangled and potentially sprawling, but it also allows space for nuances and the construction of knowledge that is not exclusively bound within Western academic principles. We engaged in a dialogue with 6 migrant artists over a period of 3 years. We worked deliberately as co-researchers and co-creators in a non-hierarchical dynamic. We ate together, took our time, shared stories of our personal journeys, and eventually co-created a series of ethnographic films that explored how we find home when the journey is impacted by government policy, social and cultural integration, and intergenerational trauma. Including our own lived experience with migration was critical to resisting the problem of looking at migrants. Taking James Thompson's notion of looking with, we shared our personal histories of migration with all of the participating artists, acknowledging our awareness of the safety we held as researchers in connection with an academic institution. I also want to clarify our kind of use of the term migrant artists. It is important to underline that we did not assume a homogeneous migrant identity, even as many of our research co-creators had to confront a homogenized stereotypical construction. Our social positioning, our experience, and our strategies of identification were different. With first, second, and third generational journeys from Sudan, Syria, Nigeria, Chile, Jamaica, there were a range of differing migrant statuses, linguistic knowledges, educational backgrounds, and class and citizenship. Additionally, some of us grew up in Western countries as second or third generation migrants, and some of us were newer to migration journeys. Throughout the research, we developed and sustained an awareness for the impact that these differences could have and did have on our research practice. Sometimes different lived experiences either enable or hinder participation. Okay, case study 1. Psych Delight is a UK-based theatre company of sanctuary developed by the French director Sophie Bess in 2011. The company is particularly interested in the way in which comedy and laughter can offer relief to the stress and tension associated with marginalized identities. In 2017, the company began working with refugees in Calais, France, in the infamous jungle refugee camp, and subsequently developed the production Borderline, a comedy about the day-to-day life in the Calais jungle. Borderline used humor and jokes drawn from the experience of the actors, who are themselves former residents of the Calais jungle, and the company was intrigued to discover the effectiveness of laughter. When we approached them in 2019, Psych Delight had started work on their new show, Mohan and Peter, which is kind of a two-hander physical comedy about how Mohan, who is a Sudanese refugee asylum seeker in UK, tries to bring Peter, his kind of colleague and British native, to visit the beautiful and complex country of Sudan. We initially booked a filming session during their rehearsal week in late November 2019 to capture the process of making. It was a chilly grey day, and we met in front of the Young Vic rehearsal space very close here to LSBU, where they received in-kind space.
After ordering the needed coffees for the morning start time, we were welcomed straight into the rehearsal room. The space was cold but light, and we all warmed ourselves by the tiny electric heater in the corner of the room. Bess called the actors to prepare. Our collaborating filmmaker, Winston Witter, prepared different camera lenses and mics. And then very quickly, we were transported into a Sudanese household, while actors rehearsed scenes of Peter's visit to Mohan's village. We could almost feel the desert and the hot air as Mohan slipped into performance mode, confidently guiding us through different landscapes and characters. At lunch, we asked Mohan if we could treat him to his favourite eatery nearby. He took us to a doner kebab shop just a few metres away from the theatre. While we waited for the order, he told Eleanor how he now lives in Brighton and works as a delivery driver. He is missing his friends in London, but he also needs to prove that he is a productive and independent member of British society to the asylum seekers caseworker. He always carries a big smile, and when Eleanor asks him what would be his ideal job, he immediately says a Hollywood actor, which he shortly follows with an ironic that my English is not so good.
A couple of weeks later, we recorded working progress showing of the piece at Theatre Delhi, a fringe venue in East London, with an audience that was a mix of Sudanese diaspora and UK communities that audibly enjoyed the story. Some jokes are specific to Sudanese culture, some cross all cultures. We recognize our own grandmother's warmth and hilarity in Mohan, grandmother's character, constantly serving food and asking very direct questions about her family's love life. Our final film, called Staging Home, cuts together footage of the final performance with rehearsal footage and is co-edited with Mohan, who also suggests music for us to use to underscore the film. So I'll just play a very short clip.
شاي بيجاي شاي كوفتي كمان بمويه صحة
Okay,
yes yeah I'm gonna send it to all my friends Peter.
Okay, cool. But listen, Mohammed, we need to work on the show, yeah?
Oh, okay.
After a few days, like 89,000 watched that video. So after 3 days or 4 days, I saw my picture, me and Peter, on the newspaper in Sudan and on the TV as well. And a lot of people stopped me and Peter on the street. Are you Mohammed? Are you Peter here in London? I got like 1,000 requests to my account. And yeah, I feel me and Peter is famous in Sudan. It's true.
Hey! Hello man.
Hello?
Are you Peter?
Yes?
Oh, I'm Muhammad, brother of Mohammed.
Oh, all right. Mohammed.
Yes.
Okay.
How are you, man? Welcome
Yes.
to Sudan. Welcome to Sudan.
Thank
You
you.
know, I saw you on the video.
What video?
That video, yeah, Nasir
Oh,
Shah. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you know,
Nice.
all my friends, they saw that video. Even my grandmother.
Really?
Yes. Yes. Welcome to Sudan.
Thank you.
Oh, let's go to the house.
Oh, we'll just go inside.
Yeah, let's go inside.
Sudan felt like a good thing because when we created that was when there were all the protests in Sudan, and I know that Mohammed was very anxious about that, and I thought, why not raise awareness about what's happening there? And it's nice to see that it's not only refugees, as in we don't really care where they come from, it's just people on boats, yeah? And I thought, no, they each have individual stories, and you know, ideally I'd love to do something about Syria, about Afghanistan, and you know, share the beauty of the country, of the people, of all of that. Then we decided to do that, but we were not sure how to do it.
Hey, yes. What about Sudan?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Sudan. Yeah, let's do a show about Sudan. The thing is, Mohammed, and don't take this the wrong way, but with Sudan, you can just get on a plane and go there. But with the moon, you can't do that. The moon is spectacular, you know?
But Peter, I can't take the ticket and book a ticket and go to Sudan. I'm not allowed to come back to my country now. Because I'm refugee.
Yeah, sorry, Mohammed. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's do Sudan, let's do it.
Okay. So when initially we started planning the ethnographic fieldwork, we considered filming collaborating artists in different locations, as per the example I already shared. However, the pandemic started and our plans to create together in person had to change. As the world shifted, funding home became additionally weighted, and we were curious how to reflect this in the project as well. So we created a blueprint for making home videos, and we handed over a set of instructions to each of the artists we have been working with and invited them to create short films in and around their homes. We asked them to consider home through the lens of critical activities that took center stage in our new pandemic lives, going for a local walk or preparing and cooking meals and meaningful objects. During the process of developing this blueprint, we were mindful of questioning who and what drives the filming process. We deliberately kept the instructions simple and let go of any requirements for kind of professional standard filming, because we wanted to kind of keep the suggestions simple and open to allow individual interpretation and choice to take the instructions in different directions. As Bloomfield and Lynette argued, there is a long tradition of mainly observational filming in refugee studies rooted in Western ethnography and anthropology that favors voyeurism and imposes predetermined socio-cultural norms, like the famous Ai Weiwei documentary about the migration crisis. Our key commitment was towards opening a portal for the artists to tell the story in the way they wanted to. So before we sent out the blueprint to our collaborating artists, we tested it on ourselves, creating our own short videos of either a walk, object, or meal. This process is what Maggie O'Neill calls ethnomimesis, a methodological and performative praxis that combines ethnographic, participatory methods and art to represent experience. While we always planned to co-create the films with the artists we were working with, the pandemic enabled a far deeper opportunity for thinking with them. We met Mojisola Elufowoju in the Nigerian restaurant Aso Rock in Dalston, London, UK. Some of you might know this place, it's great. She comes out of a rehearsal from the Arcola Theatre where she's working on her production. Here is what she said to me. A semi-autobiographical mixture of music, ritual, and poetry about motherhood and families. While she talks about rehearsals, she's simultaneously giving us advice on what to order.
Born in London, Mojisola grew up in Nigeria, where she was looked after largely by her grandmother. She currently runs Sheffield Theatre's resident company, Utopia Theatre, which focuses on stories of the African diaspora. There, we discussed her artistic achievements and dreams and how Sheffield, a sanctuary city for migrants in the UK, has become her home. At one point, her son pops by with flowers for her. He explains that he needs to travel and will miss her birthday, so an early surprise. We see a confident young man and his mother embrace. He joins us for a quick coffee, and we all get entangled in the intergenerational stories of migration. They tell us anecdotes about their lives unfolding between Nigeria and the United Kingdom. He speaks about what it means to grow up black in Northern England. Mojisola uses food references in her discussion of mothering between Nigeria and England. She recalls ingredients and smells and talks about the processes of making different recipes. Food becomes a mediator and softens the edges of a story that is in places difficult and challenging.
So we originally planned to film Mojisola at the National Theatre, where she was about to start as a staff director on Inua Elam's Three Sisters adaptation in 2020. However, the pandemic starts and the concept of home is unfolding anew, and we reach out to Mojisola, now back in Sheffield, and ask her if she can film herself and respond to our blueprint instructions. The first time we watched her video, we were transported to our first meeting. With close-up filming of colors and textures, we can imagine the smells and taste. These acts of making, of creating a dish, is an act of homemaking. Bringing her grandmother's recipes to life, we experience a multi-temporal shape of home. And that shifts the ideological boundaries of knowledge about migrants to the intimate, lived experience of the migrant.
Home is where you go after your journey. Home is where the heart is. When I think about home, there is a huge link with food. Where is home? What is home? My grandmother, the soil, the earth, my spirit.
Part 3. And the last part, you will be happy to know. In order to further test the potential of this set of film instructions and the reproducibility of our findings, we have since used this blueprint with 4 groups of students between 2023 and 2025. The first group was composed of 30 high school students aged 15 to 17 in US. The second group were 20 graduate students at the University of Groningen in Netherlands. The third groups were 30 high school students in year 10 on the island of Hvar in Croatia, and the fourth group were 10 acting students at the Kunst University in Graz. Through these workshops, we learned that consistent focus on process and identifying themes for inquiry based on the participants' interests and curiosities allowed us to extend the scope of the project from artistic research into diverse fields of migration studies, education, and sociology. We were practicing intergenerational thinking with. So through the development of these kind of iterations of at-home series, we observed recurring motifs such as family recipes, photographs and letters, and the relationships between the self and natural elements like trees, water, and the soil. These tropes, while common, carried deeply personal meanings for people from different migratory backgrounds at different life stages. So now I will read a couple of kind of recommendations that came out of this and were informed by these learnings. So 1, include yourself as researcher in the research.
Engage as an active participant in the co-production of knowledge. This relational approach fosters trust, collaboration, and vulnerability, even when the researcher does not share the same background as the participants and co-researchers. By embedding yourself in the process, you help create an environment where participants feel empowered to share their nuanced experiences.
Hand over the camera.
To foster true co-creation, relinquish control over the creative process. Providing a flexible structure, such as the blueprint used in the At Home With series, offers participants the freedom to interpret, innovate, or diverge entirely. This allows for a broader range of perspectives and more authentic storytelling. The recurring tropes, food, nature, objects, and space and place, demonstrated that shared tools can still yield deeply personal and varied interpretations of home.
Recognize and respect emerging commonalities.
Common themes such as family recipes, heirlooms, or reflections on nature often surface in participants' work. While these patterns reveal shared experiences, it is essential to avoid fixing their meanings or limiting their interpretive potential. Concepts like home are fluid and context-dependent, and the methodology should encourage participants to explore its evolving significance.
And finally, challenge dominant narratives.
The films produced using this method challenge dominant media portrayals of migrants as exclusively vulnerable or one-dimensional. Instead, participants displayed agency, humanity, and ownership of their stories. This co-creative approach provides a counter-narrative to the reductive and sensationalized depictions often found in the media, offering a more nuanced understanding of migration and home.
Ultimately, I advocate for sharing these methods with both creative communities, but also scholars in different disciplines like education, social science, and migration studies. By doing so, we can help shift the conversation away from limited stereotypical portrayals of migrants and towards a more nuanced and appreciative understanding of their experiences. I also believe that this knowledge is needed even more now that we reduce swaths of population to numbers and data statistics that can lead to unhelpful generalizations. You can read more about this work in there is a set of publication and also forthcoming work that I have done, but now I want to conclude the lecture. I often return to the Balkan region to work, visit family and friends, and contemplate on the landscape. Scars from wars still visible, but overtaken by nature and man-made imagination, they remind me that there are always ways forward if we think with each other and with more than human. The local pine trees on the island of Vis are spectacular. Adorned with pine cones, they lean against the rocks, kissing the sea. Like lovers, they embrace on high tide. They hold a secret pact. Summer fires are a common blight on the island. They start suddenly and spread fast on the dry land. When the fire embraces the pine tree, in the height of the heat, the pine cones explode and launch high in the air. They can spread the seeds miles and miles away to the next land mass, or they can float on the sea until they reach land again. While the tree burns slowly, its seeds migrate after an explosive firework of natural species protection. We are not much different. When fire embraces our homes, we explode in multiple directions. We reach far lands or float on seas for days. Some perish and some survive. Take root in unknown land. Start all over again. Thank you.